Hi, my name is Chantel Risher. I'm a senior at St. Francis College, and I'm a communication arts major. My question really is, for any of you guys, do you have any advice for someone who wants to strengthen their writing? Because I always thought that was to get an internship at a magazine in order to learn from the employers that work there about strengthening with writing. Because for me, I did little work with like newspaper writing, but I'm more of a videographer and video editor. So what advice do you have for someone like me?
Well, I occasionally will take, and I still do this actually, I'll take a magazine story that I love, and I'm talking about like the top 0.01% of stories out there that I just, the stories that bring me to tears. And I will either sort of sit down and think, what about the story do I love, and what are the mechanics of the piece, what is the narrative arc, whatever, yeah. That stuff you probably have already done in plenty of classes, but I like to sometimes type the piece and just sort of look at the text on one side of the screen and have a Word document on the other, and myself, just through the process of typing out the language, I find, at least for me, that it sort of gives me insight into the story that I never would have had, no matter how long I talked about it with somebody else, no matter how long I thought about the mechanics of it. So that is something that I find particularly useful. And also just, the sort of the greater context there is just read great shit. I mean, there's so many great magazine stories out there, so much great writing out there, and just know where to get it and just constantly be reading it. And not just reading it, but thinking about why it's great. I know
But
it's very
also,
generic,
that's a really cool technique, by the way. I want to do that.
Thank you.
I also think those are, if you're a writer, those kinds of stories will not make up the bulk of what you do every day. The bulk of what you do, as far as our sites are concerned, is news or a beauty trend story or a gallery. And part of what will help you be a better person to do that is discipline about writing. So I was really precious about writing when I first started as an intern. I would sit down and think how can this be the best thing it can possibly be? And then I would beat myself up about it for days, and it was just a torturous experience that did not yield good writing, let me tell you that. So if I were you and I didn't have a dedicated outlet like an internship, I would set up a blog. Not to say it has to be any kind of public-facing thing, but I would just set up a blog for myself, and I would put myself on a schedule. So I have to write one story every Saturday, and I have a couple of hours to do it. That is a very valuable writing skill that I think a lot of people underestimate. And then the other thing, aside from reading a lot of great stuff, is listening to people talk. One of the things that I think green, inexperienced writers exhibit more than anyone else is a lack of sense of rhythm. And Eric and I both come from print, and I think, do you talk about rhythm with writers? We talk about rhythm a lot, I think partially because print emphasizes that because there are space limitations, but a great piece has to have a great rhythm, and it has to have a nice kicker, and it has to have a flow, and you have to have sort of a long sentence and then a staccato sentence. And for me, that all came from theater, actually, but from listening to people talk.